So
your
do you think
existence.
if vegans were to be consistent that we would starve ourselves? I think that's what you're getting at.
Most likely, yeah. Yeah, but that, you're not understanding the definition again.
No, you
Reducing
are not
suffering.
understanding. So a question, are you vegan? Like where are you coming from? Like what's your standpoint exactly?
Um, I'm not a vegan.
Hmm.
Well, I mean, it's not like I like consuming meat, but it's more like I like nature.
Okay.
Yeah, it sounds counterintuitive. Like, if you
Hmm.
like nature, why are you killing these animals? But it's more like I have an appreciation for life itself, and the way I see it is like this. You can probably tell like, oh, this is the circle of life argument, though. But like the
Yeah.
circle of life, it's like God itself has already put like this um, organic structure of the cycle of life together, and
Okay, so you
we're
believe that
kind
this is like God created this whole system? Are you Christian?
of I'm not a Christian, but I do believe
That
God.
thing that things are like this for a reason or something.
Yes, I do believe that there is a
Okay.
reason why humanity is here. Well, I mean, let's just start it off. Like, do you acknowledge that your existence causes suffering?
I do.
Okay. Um, can I ask? Well, you agree to that, but can I ask you like, how do you know?
Well, I mean, I
Yeah.
feel like to some degree every person causes suffering. Our actions may have unintended consequences that we're not aware of or we don't have control over, which may cause unintended suffering. So, yes.
Yeah, yeah. So it's like it's also the harvestation of food, right?
The
Like
harvesting of food?
yeah, animals die in the process as
Yes.
well. Insects, tons and tons of
Yes.
herbicides, pesticide, ocean deserts,
Mhm.
et cetera, right? Yeah, I mean, like your own existence causes suffering, right? All
Mhm.
this stuff going on. Um, and okay, we established that. Like, do you know what veganism is?
Yes. That's a yeah, you're
It,
asking do you know what veganism is?
yeah, yeah.
How would you
Well,
define it?
okay. So for a brief context,
Mhm.
I know what it is, but some vegans has like strayed away from the original definition so much, so they have their
You
own
you mean the
definition.
the vegan
So
society definition?
yeah, yeah, the vegan
Mm,
society definition.
okay.
Is that what you subscribe to?
I would mostly ascribe to that. Wait, let me pull it up so I can read it
Oh,
through
yeah.
again. Veganism is a philosophy and way of living which seeks to exclude, as far as is possible and practicable, all forms of exploitation of and cruelty to animals for food, clothing, or any other purpose. That's basically
Mhm.
the main definition.
Yeah,
Yeah.
vegans. Vegan gains.
Yeah.
Yeah, he doesn't subscribe to that. He thinks that the argument based on the vegan definition leads into like you have to defend suffering in of itself, and
Hmm.
so he got a problem with that because he thinks that animals in of themselves have rights, and so we shouldn't base it on animals suffering. And
Hmm.
so you can't kill an animal because the animal can suffer. You can't kill an animal because they have a right to life. That's what he
Okay.
believes.
So the okay, rights based veganism. I mostly ascribe to that as well.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh.
I would say like I don't think I do think suffering matters, but I don't think that
Mhm.
suffering is all that matters. Um, I would say that we do not have the right to take an animal's life unnecessarily or intentionally, specifically, because they have. Well, I believe they have a right to their own life and to bodily autonomy. And so, even if that life were
Okay.
taken painlessly and without their knowledge, that would be
Mhm.
also wrong.
But what if you're stuck in a stranded island?
Yeah.
Right? If you're stuck in a
Mm-hmm.
stranded island and there's like chickens going on
Mm-hmm.
and going to come save you for the next 1 year,
Mm-hmm.
and you're going to have to eat, right? So you're going to starve to death. You're going to eat.
Yeah.
Based on the logic of animal rights, you can't basically take the chicken's life because you'll violate that chicken's right to life.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see a problem with that?
Well, I wouldn't say that someone having a right to their life. Um, I don't think that necessarily implies inviolability. So, of course, there's different contexts, and in the context of the desert island, there's necessity is involved. You know, it's a dire situation. You both want to survive, and I feel like you both have the right to fight for yourself to survive, like both the chicken and you. Although, I mean, first of all, this is not a situation that happens very often. So I would like to state that
Right.
I wouldn't think it's like morally like wrong to kill that chicken to survive in that situation.
But the thing is that you'll be violating its right to life
Right. But
because the chicken is has intrinsic value.
you also have the right to life. So you're both it's conflicting rights, you know? So it's a
Right,
different
right.
situation. It's not the situation that we're in a normal society where we have a choice in what we eat and a choice in what we consume.
Let's put it like this. So Einstein, right,
Yeah.
is stuck in the same situation in the stranded island,
Mhm.
and there was a Einstein has a lot of value to humanity, right? His intellect and everything, he can actually help potentially advance humanity to
Mhm.
go outward into the galaxy and whatever and whatnot. So he provides a lot of value to humanity, right?
Yeah.
But like he's stuck in a stranded island and nobody's gonna come save him for a year. And then his friend who has severe Down syndrome, can't think for himself, and they're just stuck on a stranded island because of a shipwreck.
Mhm.
So therefore, like they're both intrinsic values. They both
Yeah.
have them, but like, can Einstein go ahead and murder his friend for food to survive?
I mean, the thing is that at that point, when you're both struggling to survive and you're both starving, morality kind of goes out the window. You can't think rationally anymore. So I don't think these situations are really relevant to what we're talking about, to be honest.
Well, it's hypothetically testing
But
the
hypothetically, I
extent
wouldn't
of
say it's
your
morally wrong because it's a
really.
whole different
But
situation. I mean,
Einstein,
it's not good. It's not like it's not justified, I would say, but it's understandable because I mean, there's nothing else you can do, you know? You barely have a choice. I
I
mean, you have a
mean,
choice to die or to kill the other person, but
that is a
eventually,
choice.
like either both of you die or one of you stay alive. That is a
Well,
choice, but that's barely
what's
a
wrong?
choice.
If I was a vegan, I have to abide by my principles. So
Mm-hmm.
I would have to suicide, just die from starvation to be consistent.
To be consistent.
Yeah,
Okay. I mean, if you think so. I don't think it has any bearing on an actual
it's
situation.
absurd. It's absurd though.
You're absurd. You're
It,
absurd for even
what do you
giving me this
mean?
hypothetical. It will never happen. In what situation am
What do you
I going to
mean?
be stuck on a desert island with a chicken? Explain that to me.
I
Mhm.
thought you vegans care about consistency. You guys care about this moral superiority
We don't
that
care
you
about
guys
moral
supposedly have.
superiority. We do think
Oh, different
that
chooses there, but like,
animal rights are an extension of human rights as we consider them.
hmm
Hmm. And I mean, I think most people in a situation of necessity, a lot of people resort to cannibalism if there's nothing else to do. If there's no other choice, and either you are going to die or one of you is going to survive. Like, I don't think
hmm
it's a good idea to speculate about that. I don't think it matters because we're not going to end up in that situation. Because we live in a very comfortable society where we can make like a range of choices with different ethical implications. Um, and it's very clear that animal agriculture entails animal exploitation and animal cruelty to the point that you can't avoid it, even if you choose the most free range local whatever. produced animal products. So I think that we should not choose not to consume those products.
Okay, but being stuck in the stranded island, right?
You're killing me. You're killing me. It's 11 p.m.
I'm
here.
sorry.
Do you understand what you're doing to me?
Like you know that you cause suffering by simply existing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know the vegan definition. You follow, okay, follow the vegan society's definition.
It's complicated because I do believe in animal rights. I don't believe veganism is just about minimizing animal suffering, although minimizing animal suffering and abolishing it as far as is possible and practicable is important to me. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, I mean, just what I said before. That's kind of where I stand.
I still don't get it. Like how
Well, it's just like the way that we look at
suffering
humans
doesn't matter that
as
much to
well.
you.
Some suffering does matter, like in a human context. Like if someone beats their wife, like that is a violation of their rights as well, because bodily
Hmm.
autonomy, and I don't want people to go around beating their wives.
Hmm.
But I also don't think like if you kill a human who doesn't like who lives alone, doesn't have any social connections, and you kill them painlessly without them knowing, I don't believe that that's okay, because they have a right to their life and they have an interest in continuing that
Hmm.
life. Um, and there's no necessity or like survival involved in that situation for that choice to be like in any way understandable. So I believe that what we apply in human context can also be applied in an animal context.
So you're assuming that animal wants to live, right? It has the light. It has the right
Yes,
to that want to live, right?
yeah, I do think animals have a desire to live or an interest in living. I mean, evolutionarily, that just makes sense. And
Okay.
they value
Well, I mean,
pleasure and they don't like pain, and that has been proven.
I think desire requires a conscious understanding of such concept. However, I do think that animals responding to actions that inflict what you call suffering, they would react in a negative way. I'm still confused because, like, you're not really vegan society definition any longer. It's like you're in a mix of that and also like the right to life
Hmm.
aspect as well. I'm confused.
Well, I don't think that the vegan society definition necessarily excludes a rights based approach. It's just more like inclusive of different types of like approaches and which ways to go about it. I guess vegan gains interpret it more as like a welfareist thing. Like we should seek to exclude, as far as is possible and practical, all forms of exploitation and cruelty to animals. So it already says, like, actually in the definition, basically implies that animals have the right to not be exploited, because we should minimize that or abolish it
I
as
see.
if possible. So I do think
I
that,
see.
yeah, do you
Mm.
understand? I'm kind of trying to express
Yeah, yeah,
myself.
yeah, yeah. It is. You do support that we should not make sentient beings suffer. That would be something
Yeah,
you
if it's
agree, right?
unnecessary, and especially we should not do that intentionally, and we should definitely not have a
Mm.
whole economic system based on that like we have right now.
Mm. Okay. Are you a communist, by the way?
Um, I I I don't know, but I wouldn't. I'm not a capitalist, so that's something.
Okay, so if suffering matters to you, right,
Mm-hmm.
and you know that your life causes suffering to other sentient beings by simply existing,
Mm-hmm.
how do you justify that suffering that you're causing from your existence?
Mm-hmm. So I would say, like I said at the beginning, everyone causes unintentionally an amount of harm, right? I think the key in trying to become like trying to be better and try to be more ethical in the world and be an ethical consumer is try not to do harm intentionally. So I would say buying animal products is causing harm intentionally, especially if you know what happens in the industry. Like maybe if a consumer is not conscious or aware of what happens, they're not as much as fault at fault. But if you know what happens and you still choose to buy those products, I think that is an unethical choice because you do it intentionally.
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So I think you're probably referring to crop deaths, that animals accidentally die in crop death,
Oh
in
yeah.
crop production. I would say
Mhm.
that's not a violation of their rights because it's not done intentionally. But I do think that should
Mhm.
we should try to avoid that as much as possible. I don't think we should go out of our way to kill animals, but I do think, like in a vegan world, we would minimize crop deaths as much as possible. We would probably go more like the vertical farming route, where it's like basically zero crop deaths instead of the way that we farm now. But the thing is that that only comes after we transition towards a more plant based food system. So that's why we're advocating for that first, because I don't think people will care about crop
Mm.
deaths if they don't care about intentional animal murder, basically.
I was talking to this guy. His name is Reasonable Vegan,
I
and
know
he
him.
brought up a really good point.
Yeah.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Okay.
I've been on his podcast.
Yeah, he has a video up where I was debating him, and he brought up a
Mm-hmm.
really good point. He said, "Well, if the little kid was pulling off the butterfly's wings,
Mm-hmm.
not knowing any better, he said that he wouldn't consider that intentional harm, and so the kid would not be guilty of intentional harm." And so he said that it would become intentional harm when the kid grows up and understand a more mature concept as to why these philosophical positions as to why the butterfly, is being damaged and
Mm-hmm.
harmed
Mm-hmm.
by in that sense, and knowing that and still doing it, then the kid would be, or the grown kid would be intentional at that point. And so I like that he said that because when you know, right, whether it's accidental or not, it is when you're aware of it, then that becomes intentional.
Mm-hmm. No, I totally agree with that. Yes.
Yeah. And so prompt deaths, though, right, would be intentional. At first, if you don't know that you're causing harm, then yeah, you're
Mm-hmm.
not guilty of intentional harm. But since you are now aware of your existence causing harm, it is that you still choose to exist, knowing that you cause suffering. That suffering that you're causing is now intentional.
Mm-hmm. Okay, but would you
And
say
so,
it's on the same level intentional as animal agriculture?
what does that matter? Right? Veganism is about
It does. It does
rectifying
matter.
rectifying that.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
go ahead. Explain it to
Um.
me.
Well, you don't know if the specific carrot that you buy has killed an insect or has killed like whatever, like a rabbit or something in a field. You don't know that for sure. So it is a risk that you take. But you can also choose to buy like organic crops without having used like pesticides or whatever. But the thing is that farmers can also die in crop agriculture because of the heavy machinery that they use. So you're also risking, like, contributing to the death of a human. I wouldn't say that we should all stop buying any food because it might entail that someone accidentally dies from it.
What's your point for that? I don't
The
get it.
point is that, like, crops doesn't only entail um, animal death. It might entail both animal death and human death, right? And I
Okay.
assume that you believe that humans do have the right to life. Do you?
I believe humans, I don't know, it gets into my moral foundation or my philosophical foundation of rights. I don't necessarily think rights exist, but
I
I
mean, like,
mean,
not.
just
I
go
don't
on with your
mean
position.
like. I mean, they at least have legal rights, right?
That's going to diverge into some other topic. Just keep
Humans
going,
have legal
keep going with it.
rights. Now,
Or
the thing
killed
is
in the
that you don't
process.
know. You don't know what's happening. We don't have that information
Okay.
as much as you think. You don't know if that specific, like, carrot that you buy has entailed an animal death or a human death. But the fact is that I guess both accidentally happen in that production. But you don't know
Wait.
whether you're
Okay.
specifically contributing to that. And the thing is that
You
it's
don't
not on the
know.
same level as animal agriculture, because animal agriculture, like, the product is harm. You're profiting, like they're profiting off exploitation of animals and killing them intentionally. That is the product. It's not the same as crop deaths.
If the whole entire point of like past vegans acknowledging that animals do die in the process, then I don't understand your position here because that does not jive with that
Well, obviously,
other
we try to
particular
avoid it as
narrative.
much as possible. Oh, obviously, we try to avoid it as much as possible. Like, we don't like that it happens. But the thing is, like, there's still, like,
So it does
you have
happen.
the choice. Sometimes it does
It does happen,
happen.
right?
Yeah.
Okay, so there is death in the process, or is
Yes.
there not?
But you do
Okay,
have,
so
like, the
is
more
there's death in the
ethical choice
process?
to, you do have the more ethical choice to, like, buy organic crops, for example, that may not use the pesticides that might have killed animals in a different kind of production. But the thing is that most consumers don't know exactly how their crops were produced or what ethical implications it has. And vegans, we
Mhm.
do know that crop deaths happen, and we acknowledge that,
Okay.
and we want to like minimize it or abolish it if that's possible, right? But the thing is, like, I don't understand. Like, do you personally care about crop deaths? Do you care about animal death in general?
Okay, before I lose my train of thought, the point I'm trying to get at was if you do acknowledge it, then I don't really understand the point that you're making about like, oh, I don't know if I did contribute to this farm killing animals when I buy this carrot from over there.
Mm-hmm.
Point is that you do acknowledge that animals do die in the process, and so that is a risky behavior that you need to question,
Right.
not necessarily start doing it until like you figure it out.
What's unfortunate, I think, about our current food system is that in general, there crop deaths do occur. But we can only
Okay.
change that once we transition to like a system in which people actually care about animals and want to avoid that. Like, there's no way to consume food right now without causing some level of harm, but we can minimize that level
Mhm.
of harm right now, even though we do seek to abolish that at some point in the future.
Right now, right?
Hmm.
We're not talking about the future. Right now, you acknowledge animal harm is being harmed in the process of your food production, the way it's being currently done right now.
Yes, probably.
Okay, so how do you justify knowing that you're actually a part of that situation? How do you justify
So
your
do you think
existence?
if vegans were to be consistent that we would starve ourselves? I think that's what you're getting at.
Most likely, yeah.
Okay, well, that is an untenable position. I would argue for the minimization of suffering as long as the abolishing of suffering is not possible. So I do think it's consistent with the moral
Well,
position to want to minimize the suffering and the death of animals if abolishing is not possible in that situation, in the system that we live in. I wouldn't say that's inconsistent with the vegan position.
no, it would be inconsistent because you have the option to stop it.
Well, then we disagree.
No, then at this
I
point,
don't believe a human should kill themselves to be an ethical person.
well, that's what your definition warrants.
No, it does not. And I just explained to you why
How
it
does it
doesn't.
not? No, if
No.
you're if the whole shtick is to reduce suffering as much as possible until we reach to a T where we can fully abolish suffering and fulfill the vegan ideology, then you need to follow it through to the T. So you need to be consistent and do what you must do in order to not be part of the situation that causes suffering. If you can't justify it, of course.
And we try as much as possible to minimize our suffering, but we don't kill
You can go even
ourselves.
further.
We can go even further, but we're not going to
Yeah, yeah,
because
you can
it's a
go
crazy position. Like, it
exactly.
doesn't, like, I know, but it's not that it's
Exactly.
inconsistent. It's not inconsistent.
No, it is
You're
inconsistent
just
if you don't
create
go through all the way.
No, it
That's
is
the point.
not. No, it is
That's
not.
the
What
reductio.
about someone who believes in human rights and wants to abolish human exploitation and death as much as possible and harm as well? Like, we all probably harm another
What?
person accidentally or intentionally. Like, does that mean that we
I
should
mean,
kill ourselves because we might harm someone or because we have harmed people and we shouldn't?
well, I mean, I would need to talk to that person that believes that. But I don't think majority of people believe
No,
that
exactly,
that's
because
what the
we
buck
believe in
stops at.
human rights, but you wouldn't take it as far when it comes to human rights. Why would you take it that far when it comes to animal rights,
That
right?
that's what the vegan definition requires, though.
It
I
does
can
not.
understand why you don't. Well, you have to. You have to reduce
It does
suffering as much
not.
as possible to a T,
It does not.
because
If you choose to starve yourself because it's morally better to do so, then it causes yourself suffering. And then there's a
well, yeah,
confliction of rights
okay.
because you do have the right to keep yourself alive, but I do think that should be done causing like as little harm as possible. Do you not agree?
But I mean, you don't have to starve yourself. Like you can just suicide in a very quick way.
No.
What do you mean? That
Like
eradicates the
what do you
suffering?
mean? What the fuck are you talking about?
I'm
No,
I'm talking
I'm
about being
seriously
vegan,
I'm done with this argument. It does not you don't make any sense. Are you living in
I'm
reality right now?
Christina.
What do you believe in?
I'm challenging you to become a vegan.
I am vegan. You don't
You're not doing it
understand what it is.
because
No.
you can you can go a step further and stop the suffering you're causing
Fine, I'll
by
just get my gun and kill
existing.
myself right now. Is that what you want? Would that make you
No,
happy?
my belief does not entail that, but you as a vegan,
It does
that's what you
not.
need to do.
It does not.
But
And
I've
that's
just
where we
explained to
just
you how it
disagree.
does.
I'm too
Oh,
tired for this.
well, I'm just saying that, like, I don't know how it's not. You just keep saying it's not.
Because
I just don't see how.
I
You see, you
explained
can't
to
explain.
you that it is consistent with veganism to want to minimize
Mhm.
suffering as long as it is not possible to be abolished. But I do think that we should work towards the abolishing of that suffering while we're alive, right? I do think you can be
Okay,
productive in changing the system in which we live while maybe causing some harm unintentionally or accidentally or without wanting to
okay.
because we don't have a better choice available. We can make that better choice
You get
available.
suicide. Yeah, but you're not understanding this, the definition again.
No, you
Reducing
are not
suffering,
understanding.
no, reducing suffering does ultimately entail to the point where you can do no more suffering at all. You're saying
No.
that as long as you're saying that like we can rape, like the analogy would be like we can rape once a year as long as we don't rape like 10 times a year or something.
So you're saying that vegans would say that it's acceptable to rape once a year instead of 10 times a year?
That's the analogy. If you
In
don't
what
want to abolish
situation would
completely,
that be necessary? You don't need rape to sustain yourself?
no, 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 no.
What do
Oh
you
god.
mean? What do you mean?
The analogy is that if veganism is not trying to abolish suffering,
We are trying
it's just
to. We want to minimize it
to.
while we are not able to abolish it yet.
So you're trying to abolish it, suffering, right?
Yeah,
Veganism
we are
tries to abolish.
trying, but while it's not possible,
Okay,
we
then
can
what's the
work
problem?
towards that. What is the
What's the
problem?
problem? What's the problem that I said? You were just following through but while acknowledging your life's existence causes suffering for your own existence. In order to justify that, which I'm not saying you justified it, therefore you must do what is necessary to rectify and be consistent with the vegan ideology, which I think is absurd.
You're the one being absurd. I'm not the one making that argument. I'm
Christina,
sorry. We just fundamentally disagree. And that's
I don't think we disagree.
we
I just
do.
think
We
you're
do.
just being you're just realizing the truth of it and you don't want to
I'm not.
acknowledge it.
uh,
I know it's absurd, right?
do you personally have any standards for your own morality? What do you believe in? What do you think we should
I
strive
do.
to be a good person? What do you think?
I think that humanity has some meaning to existing. And so I would
Mm-hmm.
never think that you should suicide. That's why I don't think that
Exactly.
abolishing
You can believe
suffering,
those things at the same time.
I don't necessarily agree with the vegan ideological perspective. to a T.
Mhm.
That's ridiculous because I don't think suicide is the answer.
But you don't have to. Okay.
No, you have
So,
to because you
okay,
got to justify the suffering you're causing from your existence.
what do you think about reducitarianism?
Reducentarianism is I don't even know why people do it. I mean,
That
it
position
could
would,
be.
in your opinion, not logically entail that they would have to kill themselves because it is about reducing, not abolishing, right?
I don't know much about reducentarianism as a philosophy or whatever, but if
Okay.
it entails exactly what the vegan definition,
It
the
does not.
vegan ideology is, then it needs
Reducitarianism
to be
is basically
suicide.
just reducing the consumption of animal products. So it's a very wide definition.
Okay.
People use it in different ways, but people might do it
Okay.
to reduce animal suffering, or they might do it to reduce environmental damage. There's different
Okay.
reasons, but would you then agree to that it would be better to reduce?
If I understand reducentarianism from you,
Hmm.
it is about just reducing animal products. Then
Like the
yeah, I mean,
consumption, yeah. So
I would have to ask them why. But if they're just reducing animal products for the sake of animal products, then I would think that yeah, it doesn't lead to suicide at all. Just get rid
okay,
of animal products and start eating starches, whatever you're
yeah.
doing.
So I mean, then it would mostly be because of it would mostly be about suffering, and mostly be about just reducing the suffering that animals experience, rather than you know the giving them rights. But if you agree to that, would you personally choose to do that?
Wait, say that again. Your
Would you
robot
would you personally
can
choose to reduce your animal consumption?
choose to reduce my animal consumption. For what?
For multiple reasons. Would you personally say that animal suffering is bad? Or animal and cruelty to animals is
Personally,
bad? Personally, do you care
personally,
about
I
that?
don't think okay. So we're getting to my way of thinking. Um, so personally, I don't necessarily think that the harm that you're causing animal is bad in of itself.
Mm-hmm.
I think that it is bad because you are betraying your own good judgment from your inner spirit.
So you would say that it reflects bad on the person to act cruelly to an animal.
It would
Like it's
act
it
bad
basically
in
means that you're like a bad person for wanting to be cruel to an animal, or being intentionally cruel to an animal.
yeah, because like I feel like the way that we truly are is that we're internally still. And so to
Mm-hmm.
have these particular desires to try and enact in reality, that is, you're betraying your true self, your inner stillness. So it
Okay.
doesn't matter if it's animals or
Or humans.
a plant.
A
Yeah, or
plant?
humans or plant. Yeah, yeah. I would also extend that to plant as well, or bacteria as well,
So
because the act in and of itself, what?
would you say that plants have feelings, or plants are sentient, or plants are, they're deserving
Oh,
of the same consideration that humans are? Or
plants though. I think plants are alive. I
plants are
think that
alive?
plants are, if it's true that you believe in theory of evolution, all beings that are alive evolve from bacteria. And so plants is just another
I
species
mean,
that
but
evolved
plants have not
differently
evolved to
from
be
bacteria.
sentient or feel pain, because that there would be no use in
Okay,
them feeling pain, because they cannot escape from that pain. Not like
I
animals can.
think
There's
their
no
evolution,
evolutionary reason for them to be able to feel pain.
right? I mean, that's I can agree to that because
Okay.
they're in a position where they're necessary
Mm-hmm.
in their role that they're playing. They
Mm-hmm.
have to be that guy stuck in the ground feeding the animals that needs to feed on them in order to keep like life going in that
Mm-hmm.
perfect circle of life. However, I do think plants are alive, but I don't. What about it? Because I think that It is your own innate action that you're betraying, no matter what.
Okay, so you said perfect circle of life, right? So in
Hmm.
the beginning, you also said that you find like beauty in nature, or like you there's something about
Oh
nature that
yeah.
you really okay. Would you say that that cycle of life would be as
Hmm.
good if we were not uh, a predator in that system? We were a victim in that system.
I think that if evolution has evolved us to be in that position, it will probably evolve us into a vantage where we don't feel these particular things. That's why I feel the question is a bit loaded.
So what I'm basically asking you is that it's easy to say that the cycle of life or the circle of life or whatever is beautiful when you're at the top, when you're not scared
Okay.
of being preyed upon, not scared of being eaten anytime. Um, and I
Hmm.
just personally, I think that we should consider the victim's perspective in this circle of life. But wouldn't you say that in most ethical situations, it's useful to look at things from a victim's perspective?
Absolutely. I
Okay.
think that you can never truly realize yourself fully if you don't really experience the other half of what people call pain.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just be all boisterous, all, all pompous, in that way.
Mm-hmm.
When you finally fall and your ego got beaten in and you see your
Mm-hmm.
limitations,
Yeah.
that's when you start to see the full circle of who you really are, the other
Mm-hmm.
half, and you become humble.
So you do think that it's useful to think to consider a situation from a victim's perspective, from someone that is being harmed and that can experience that harm. Would you say that animals are
Mhm.
victims in this situation?
I wouldn't really like the word victim,
Why
but
not?
rather experience. Victim kind of implies the prerequisite of this moral paradigm that exists. I don't necessarily think morality exists, so
You don't
I
believe
don't necessarily
morality
think that.
exists in general?
Yeah, morality does not. No one has demonstrated morality exists.
Then why am I talking to you? So if I
um,
go out and stab someone, would you say that was wrong?
I already told you that that's betraying your inner self.
What the fuck is the inner self?
Inner self. Oh man.
Where are you getting
Yeah,
this
you
from?
really want
Like,
to get to
did you
this?
read a book or
Really?
something? Where is this coming from? What's the inner self
Uh,
like that?
this all this comes from like once you get rid of like Western philosophy, start to dabble in Eastern philosophy. It echoes in all of like Zen
An Eastern
Buddhism. It
philosophy? Oh,
echoes in all
Buddhism,
of.
right? So the whole like everything has a life force kind of idea. Like everything is equal. Everything has a spirit.
Oh, there is, let's just say, spirit in things that are alive. But yeah, that's where I'm getting my stuff from when I say
Things that are alive.
you're betraying when you are
Right.
betraying your inner self.
Would you say that animals, humans, and plants are kind of on the same
The
level, that they're all
truth.
alive,
Yeah, they're
and
alive. Yeah,
you don't want to harm any of
even
them, or it
bacteria.
doesn't matter if you harm any of them? Like, which position do you
It's
take?
not. It's not. It's not about harm. It's about
What's it about?
you're betraying your inner self.
Would you say those are
You're
betraying your
doing.
inner self?
What do you mean?
If
What do you
you
mean?
like if you kick a dog or a human
Mhm.
or cut down a plant, would you say that those three are betraying your inner self?
When there's no need to, yeah, you're betraying your inner
Exactly.
self.
Right, but there's okay, but when would you say
Why?
there's a need to?
Whenever you're actually self-defense, I guess.
Self-defense? Animals, the animals you eat are not attacking you. You don't need to kill them in self-defense. Then how would you justify that in not betraying your inner self?
I mean, I don't get it.
I don't get you.
I
um
truly don't get it. Like, what are you trying to get at? Like,
the thing is that you
not
feel like if
attacking the
if
plant?
you're I mean, you say that there's a level of necessity needed to justify harming or betraying your inner self against like a plant or an animal or a human or like any life form, right? You need a level of justification for that
Okay.
to be okay and not betraying your inner life, yeah, inner self. But animals, they're not attacking you, but you do choose to consume them and therefore pay to kill them directly.
Hmm.
What would your justification for that be if there's not a level of necessity involved?
This way, I have to get it back to your moral foundation.
What is your moral foundation?
No, yours.
Mine. Why? I'm asking about yours. How would you personally
Because
justify that? Because you said there's necessity needed, but there is no necessity in consuming animal products.
no. Your justification of why you needed to eat the plants and not the animals. I won't know why you're abstaining from the animals.
Because I personally don't believe, like you, that the plants have a spirit. I don't believe that they're sentient. I don't believe that it matters
Okay.
whether you cut them. I do. I mean, the crop death thing, we already talked about it. I do think that that matters, but I do think that that is secondary
That
to
is a
the
lot.
animal exploitation that happens, and we should avoid that as much as possible. But we live in a system in which that is not possible right now. I already explained all of that to you. But I do think that there is more harm and cruelty involved in animal agriculture than there is in plant agriculture, and therefore we should choose the more ethical option.
The ethics is to reduce suffering, right?
As long as you can't abolish it.
As long as you can't abolish it.
Yeah, as long as you can't abolish it.
So
Because it is
don't
possible. It is
entirely abolish
possible.
suffering.
It is
It is possible by
possible
suicide.
to
Yeah.
eliminate animal death in crop agriculture and crop production. We don't have the infrastructure for
What?
that right now. It is possible.
How?
Have you heard of vertical farming?
How is
You
that
should
possible?
research that. It is possible.
I'm
We're
aware of
not
vertical
in that
farming, but
state. We're not in that stage yet, but it is possible. But it isn't possible to produce meat without harming the animal, without killing them.
yes,
That
you
is
can.
that is.
Well, you can kill it, but you can avoid the suffering, the harming of the animal in the process.
But I
But
already told you. Yeah.
the vertical farming, there's no evidence that you can ever grow staple food out of them.
What do you mean?
You should know that, like, one of the main criticism about vertical farming is that you cannot grow staple food out of vertical farming because staple foods is food that that are meant to actually be energy dense and take care of your
Hmm.
energy, right? So caloric dense food
Okay. Well, show me the evidence for
and
that.
stuff like that. No, the burden is on people who wants to do that. Like, how do you grow
Well,
staple
I
food
mean,
out
if
of
they're
that?
still researching it, but it is possible to
So right
grow at
now,
least some
no.
plants without any death or suffering involved. You do agree to that, right?
I mean, if you're not going to grow staple food, then I don't really see the
Well,
point.
I would have to look
You're
into
gonna,
that to see if I don't know
yeah, that's
if
one
that
of the
is
main
even
criticisms,
if it's not possible to grow staple foods without animal death or
right?
suffering involved, that we should
Hmm.
minimize it as much as possible. And that is
Okay,
still
so you're going back to the
morally
vegan definition.
consistent. Yeah.
Okay, so you can minimize it even further by suiciding.
We
It's
have an
doable.
interest in our own life. You don't think
What is
that
that based
counts?
on? What is that based on?
It's based on sentience?
Elaborate on that. Based on sentience? What does that
Yeah,
even
because
mean?
we experience life and we have an interest in continuing that life. Right? Do
Is
you
it
have
necessary
an
or
interest
what is that?
that we God, I don't
Why do people suicide? Why do people suicide?
well, some those people don't have an interest in continuing their life, but most people do.
Okay,
I would say
so
most
that's
people do.
the conflict to your position. It's not a necessity. It's just an option. If it's an
Mm,
option,
I'm so tired of you.
then You just haven't reached these arguments before. I can see it. Welcome to reality.
No, welcome to absurdity, apparently.
Well, yeah, veganism is absurd.
You're the absurd one. Good night. I'm leaving. Nice talking to you.
Consider